Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is Futro Hidden Movie Jam. I started the podcast differently this time for the first time in podcast history. Hello and welcome to the Futro Hidden Movie Gems podcast. I'm your host, Ty Spiker Christensen. Everybody's telling me how I should live my life. Nah, man, I'm doing my own thing. Thought that was a cool line. I didn't do it justice, but I love that line in the movie.
Leave me alone and get your own life.
I think that was better said. And we've got Jordan Christensen on the podcast.
I'm Spider-Man. So I don't have a quote.
I'm Spider T-Rex. And we've got Cameron Mickle on the podcast.
I love chai tea. What did you just say? Chai tea?
TT? You're saying TT. All right. And we've got Grant Mickle on the podcast.
That's like saying coffee.
Coffee. Guys, today we are talking about Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. This is the second of likely 3 movies, maybe 4. They keep making money.
Yeah.
I hope not.
You hope not to see another Spider-Man movie?
They need to finish on 3 and just end there.
Why? Every single one they've made is amazing so far. It'd be like, don't make more Dark Knight trilogy.
Well,
yeah,
you kind of shot yourself in the foot there, Cameron. I mean, we can all agree
Yes,
that
it would have
Rises
been.
wasn't
Oh
as
my,
good.
you guys are tripping balls, bro. You're saying you wouldn't want to give Christopher Nolan
I'm saying they would do
Nolan Batman movie?
I'm saying they would try to do a plot that was bigger than the multiverse already, and it just
Grant, I'm
wouldn't
with
do
you.
well.
I was pleasantly surprised by this movie, but part of it is because like it's not a. Well, I don't want to say it's a full movie. I rather enjoy. Geez, let's get right into this, guys. Today, this movie came out in 2023. It's in theaters. Go watch the heck out of this movie. I missed the first one when the first time it came around because I remember thinking like, "There's a cartoon Spider-Man." I still got to go see Thor. I think Ragnarok at the time, or maybe like Endgame. It was just like there were so many superhero movies out at the time, and I was like, I don't know if I have time to see another Spider-Man. That thing looks like it's doing its own thing. After I saw the reviews, though, I was like, I'm putting on my radar because I always love a good Spider-Man movie. And by a good Spider-Man movie, I don't think there's a bad one. Correct me if I'm wrong. Other than like Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans, to me, almost were made better with No Way Home. Tom Holland Spider-Man kind of retroactively fixed. And that's what these Spider-Man movies keep doing. Holy crap, this movie was amazing. So many Easter eggs. And Grant, I want to hear, and Cameron, you saw it twice, right? So let's get into what was like watching it for the first time, rewatching it for the podcast. I'll start. You guys are gonna have to fill in some gaps because I made the mistake of bringing my 1-year-old to the movie theaters. my 4-year-old and 3-year-old love this movie. My 1-year-old, she got a taste of butter popcorn and she just never sat down after that. I just was hoping that she tried some of that sweet, delicious butter popcorn, and then she was crawling over the walls, just like the little spider baby in this movie. So I miss like gaping holes of this movie, and my wife and I took shifts with the kids. So I definitely miss like a good 25 to 30 minutes of this whole movie. It was 2 hours and 20 minutes long. That's a long movie for a kid to sit through. But I loved every second that I saw, and then I heard some of it, and then I didn't see other parts of it. So you guys will have to fill in a few gaps because I actually am a little confused. I like didn't even see the ending. My wife is explaining it to me literally.
Right.
Like, okay, well, we'll get into spoilers in a second because I have a few questions. I literally have questions because I don't know what happened. So let's get into what was like watching this movie for the first time and rewatching it for the podcast. Cameron, you start. You saw it twice.
Yeah, watching it for the first time with Grant, Jordan, and kind of everyone was really fun.
Everyone except time. Just
it was almost like it was almost so much to digest, like that there was so much of the art I didn't appreciate on the first time because I was just like, so much information, and it's kind of one of those movies that it's making like joke after joke where I don't even have enough time to like laugh at it or like understand the joke before that's already moved on to the next joke. So, but overall, I mean, obviously just shocked at the ending, a little unsatisfied at the ending, but on rewatch, I loved it, and it was so much better because it went from, for me on the first viewing, it was like a 9 out of 10. But I felt like it wasn't a complete movie, but going back and rewatching it, I gave it a 10 out of 10. It's actually it's my number 20 film on my top 100 because just like the entire time, like after knowing the entire plot, I was just like looking the entire time for flaws, and I just couldn't find a single flaw in the entire movie. And
Better than the
watching,
first, then, right?
yeah, just a little. And just
Wow.
retroactively looking at it also from the second time, like it felt like a much more complete story the second time. Which the first time I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like you finished before the climax. But honestly, for me, I felt like rewatching the second time, I felt like when they were in like the Indian world, I felt like that was the climax, and Miles like going and saving and stopping the cannon event was more of the climax, and then the rest of it was just like almost rising action for the next film.
Yeah. Yeah.
So really loved it on the second one, and plus there were so many times where I was just like the art in it. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is literally the most beautiful thing ever. Like the smallest conversations, like Gwen and Miles' conversation, just like having all of it be
How
upside
about
down.
Gwen and her father too? I love those.
Yeah.
The art, the paint dripping. I just thought that was so cool. I was like, that's a
Yeah.
really cool choice.
But yeah, I mean, just like all, and that was also what was nice. The second time I was able to pick up a lot more on themes and messages than the first time. It was just like, especially because of how visual it is, it's like visceral. Where I'm like, ah, I felt like what's his name from Conspiracy Theory. I was just like, he's flying. Like just so much information in your
Spider-Man is
brain.
flying.
So, but yeah, I definitely do recommend rewatching it, because I think it
Yeah.
brings there's so much more value and like appreciation that you can give it.
For sure. And I have more questions too. Grant, how about you, man? Rewatching it, watching it, and rewatching it.
I haven't gotten to see it twice yet, but yeah, kind of like Cameron said, it just is very like in your face, like fire hydrant, really fast. Like so much was happening that you're like, it's hard to process all at once, you know? But the comedy is just so great throughout all of it. Like you're laughing the whole time. And then you just have like these slow moments that really build like the emotional connection to the characters. And you just like, I loved seeing like the arc of Gwen's character, like in her relationship with her father. So it's an amazing watch. But definitely, yeah, like Cameron said, rewatching it, I think you'll be able to catch a lot more. There's just a lot to take in first watch.
For sure. How about you, Jordan?
Yeah, I think I agree with Cameron. I think I liked it better than the first.
Wow, that's crazy to hear you say that.
I just rewatched the first with my wife, and then I watched the second one, and and maybe it's just because I had already seen, and so it was just fun to see something new, because there's so much to enjoy about this film. And then I was having PTSD when the whole Indian part, because then I was like thinking back to our episode on RRR and just like the endless comments on people correcting us. Because
It's
the part
Tollywood, not Bollywood.
I know, well, and it's
Now
just
we
funny
know.
listening to him talk about his history, and I'm like, oh, this is like, it's just very funny that they're always talking about their history. At least I just, maybe not always, just at least in the comment section, people are, that they're very specific about details. But yeah, I loved all the, Ty already mentioned it too, all the different art styles, and there were so many fun creative choices. And I really wish I could have sat next to Cameron and Grant, because I know they were just eating up all the different Spider-Mans, because I know you guys are all about those costumes. So
Well, we sat next to Anna, and any time that Miguel came on screen, she's just like,
What, she finds him
That was
handsome?
really
He was
funny.
so scary. Are you kidding me?
Oh yeah, well, I think because
There was that one scene where it was showing her turn
Isaac,
to Anna,
so-
and I was like, and she was like, I thought somebody else was gonna say, someone else was gonna say it, I was gonna say it.
That's really
That's
funny.
funny.
Dude, okay.
His
So
back muscles? Are you kidding me? Homie,
maybe I
no.
mistakenly, okay, so help me out a few things, okay? So before we even get into it, I have questions. First things first, did Miguel flash his teeth? Is he a vampire? Is he really a Spider-Man? Because they question it, right? He's like, are you even really a Spider-Man? Because he's pretty calloused, and you see him taking an injection, which made me think of Jared Leto's vampire or whatever, Morbius. It's like, it's Morbin time, you know?
So I watched like an Easter egg video, and apparently
Yeah.
they talk about how, or maybe Cameron explained this to me, I can't remember, but they were
Yeah.
talking about how 2099 Spider-Man, Miguel, like he's the only non-bitten by a spider
Yeah, you
Spider-Man.
seem-
Like,
the only-
yeah,
he's
he
the
does
only
an
self-
injection.
he's the only
self-made.
although
dude.
the pig, he was bitten by a radioactive pig, so I don't know how the pig spider got into all this, because it says we're arachnid universe, and I'm like, a spider pig. And why is he a spider pig? Was he a spider bitten by a pig? Is that what it was?
The pig was Charlotte's Web, so there's this.
Oh, that was a
Same
dumb
universe.
joke, right?
Sorry.
No,
I
but
tried.
I'm trying to remember, because it was a spider bitten by a pig, right? Is that why? Anyway, it
Wait.
says it in the first movie. Remember, he goes, "I was bitten by a radioactive spider," and they do everyone's, and he goes, "Bitten by a radioactive pig." It's something he says pig.
I
So
still
I just
think
thought
he
that was
a
funny.
pig,
It
though.
seemed, was that
I'm pretty sure he was still a pig before he got bitten, though.
right? That's what I remember. But anyway, I would be interested to go back, because they literally mention how this multiverse is like for Spider-Man. Anyway, that being said, really liked that they went back and explained Gwen, because in the first movie she said she lost friends, and you see her cradling Peter, and this one they expounded by the fact that she killed him because he was a lizard man or something, which I liked. I actually liked that Peter Parker was like a nerd in her universe that drank a lizard potion, which Connors or whatever, that's always his story, the lizard guy. So I really liked that they, again, all this it's like it's sort of like poetry, they rhyme. Just quoting George Lucas there. I liked that. All the multiverses, they're all like so closely related, but it makes sense in this universe where it's like these are all specific people with a very similar story. There's just millions of different facets of that story, and I rather liked it. So that was fun. Because to me, it's like I know the story, so it's kind of fun when they tweak it just a little bit. It's like in this universe, like Parker's the one that took the anecdote or whatever, the serum that turned him into a lizard, and then Gwen ended up killing him to protect other people. And you're like, oh, and then it's like Gwen's own father. That's okay. So, quick question. I have a question. Don't understand when they were like, Miles, you have to do this. He has. I literally missed when they were telling him what he has to do. He has to let his. We're gonna get into spoilers here now. Miles has to let his father die. Is that right?
Yeah, because every single universe, the police captain who's close to Spider-Man sacrifices himself doing something heroic that inspires the hero to become better.
So sometimes it's related and sometimes it's not. But quick
So
question: does
that's-
Gwen's father gonna die? Because
so
then
that's what makes Gwen realize
question it.
anything's possible, is because her dad,
Oh,
after she
yeah.
explained to him, she said, he's like, I quit my job as police
Right,
captain.
but
She's like,
does
when?
it still mean that he could die not as the police chief?
No, because then it wouldn't have the same meaning, because it's the mantle of police chief, because that
Interesting.
linked with the Spider-Man.
I figured that was the catalyst, but I just wanted to
And-
make sure I cleared
and
that
so
up, because I
that's what-
remember when she was like, "You're not police chief anymore." It's like, "No, I quit." And I know that that was like a big thing, and I'm like, is it just because he quit that now the curse is broken, or there's a possibility that the Spider-Verse may not be
For
at
me,
stake?
it became Minority Report, where she realized the Tom Cruise moment, where it's like, maybe it doesn't have to happen that way.
Yeah.
Maybe it happens that way often.
What
but
was it called?
doesn't mean-
Where's my what's it called? Precog, or no, that's what the weird twins are called, the triplets are called. What do they call it? My Minority Report. That's what it's called. It's called, well, what's that thing called in that movie? His Minority Report is saying that it didn't actually happen. Yeah. Anyway, I'm an idiot.
No, yeah, but and so that's
called
what,
the
see, for
Minority
me,
Report.
that's why I love it too, is because she realized, like, oh my gosh, my influence on my father, my speech to my father may have altered my canon event. And so saying, and my reality isn't collapsing because it happened months ago. And so her realizing maybe you can have both cakes. And so that's what I love, is that for me, I feel like the theme throughout the movie is the idea of you can't have your cake and eat it, which is so interesting, that the fact you see Miles trying to do that as a student, to have the student relationship and be Spider-Man, but
Yes,
then
a
even-
great
and-
metaphor.
and
or
also-
And tries to
yeah.
physically take cakes
And
to a
w-
party. And then
yeah,
it
and
doesn't
not only
end well.
that, but like with his message, it won't even
right.
fit on one cake, everything that he wants to express. So he has to bring
Mm.
2 cakes, and it's fine until he has to do Spider-Man activities, is when the cake is ruined. And so not until
Well,
he
somebody's going to film school. Okay, take it easy, Cameron. All right.
and so that's what I just love. Like, all of that is just, especially on the second viewing, I was like, oh my gosh, everything. And that's why everyone's telling him you can't do both. Like,
Right.
you just have to accept. And that's why he's like, no, like, forget this. You guys can't give up on, like, because that's what I love also, because I think the message is so like you can argue both sides, which makes it for me that much more compelling. Because from Miles' point of view, he thinks, what's the point of it all if you can't defend and sacrifice and do everything you can to protect the ones you love? And for Miguel, someone who's lost all the ones he loves because he tried to do that, or and cost the lives of like tons of others. I love that his point of view is all that matters is what's best for the group. You have to be willing to sacrifice who's most important to you in order to protect your reality. And Miles is like, no, I can't accept that. I just have to guarantee sacrifice that person because my reality might collapse.
Yeah, it's just stand by and not do anything, right? It's kind of it kind of reminded me of the whole and I'm probably butchering it, but just like the moral practice of pushing someone to save a train of 5 people or whatever. The train's barreling down. Would you kill one person
Yeah.
to save 5 people? Kind of something like that, where it's like, am I just going to stand by and let this happen? No, I'm going to take the chance and try to help as many people as I can, and defying people's expectations, which I like because that is a through line from the first movie. I think the "What's Up Danger" song played with Miles finally filling the shoes of Spider-Man is one of the most powerful scenes in a movie I've seen in a long time. I go back and watch that scene
It's like
all
an
the
ET
time.
moment. Yeah.
It's so unbelievable, and I love the Film Joy's video talking about that scene where he's literally subverts your expectations and he's going upside down toward the city. It's such a beautiful shot, but he's literally flipped the script, if you will, like, and it's a great moment where he finally dons the Spider-Man outfit, but it's his own outfit. He's literally embodying Spider-Man, being the hero that he's aspired to be all along, and in this movie, I like how that was still part of it. Now, the only problem, well, not the problem I have with it, I need to see this movie again because I like what you're saying on rewatch, because I did feel like it was culminating into this thing, and I may have missed the moment where the emotional impact of him telling Miguel, like, no, I'm going to do my own thing. That's the "What's Up Danger" scene, and then he like zaps him and then jumps off this speedway up to
train,
nowhere,
yeah.
I don't know, up to the sky. It's a great moment, but I felt like it wasn't as powerful as the first one. So to me, I still like the first one more, but I do want to rewatch this one because I thoroughly enjoyed it. Like this is easily going to make the top 15 for this year for me, like, of movies. I can't imagine things beating this. Like, I mean, I'm still holding out for Oppenheimer, hoping that turns out good.
And
But
Dune
like,
Part 2. Whoa, whoa,
and Dune
whoa.
Part 2, yeah, I have high hopes for these certain movies that are coming out, but like this one just defied my expectations because I went to Rotten Tomatoes just to get an idea. It's like, oh my gosh, if it's anywhere between 70 to 80%, I'll be thrilled. And it was like 96 from or 95 from critics, 96 from audience. I'm like, they did it again. They defied all my expectations, made like this really heartfelt kids movie with like terror. It reminded me of Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Like, Miguel was terrifying, guys. There's a scene, if I'm not mistaken, he's going to eat Vulture at the very beginning when Vulture's flying around the paper cartoon. Miguel like
Oh.
has him and he's gonna bite, right? He's gonna bite him. And
Yeah,
then the cop,
but then
the
the cop,
helicopter
the
shows
light
us
shines on him. He
searchlight
says,
on him, and he stops, and he's like, "I'm one of the good guys." He's like, "You don't look like a good guy." And then the Vulture shoots down the helicopter, and they have to save it. But like, he's grabbing the Vulture, and he's like flares his teeth for a second. You're like, he's going to like just eat the Vulture, or eat his face, or kill him right then and there. And then
Yeah.
there's like later scenes which I really like where the good guys, like, the heartfelt, the punch to the gut is obviously all of them discussing. They're like, this isn't what we talked about. Like, we were gonna let Miles down easy or whatever. And you find out that Peter B. Parker from the first movie, his mentor, all of the people that he thought were his friends, Gwen, they refused to go see him because he hadn't gone the
Canon event.
way of losing, yeah, the main event. And then like after, I guess we could be friends, but they would be worried that they would try to tell him or intervene. And I also even liked that they recontextualized the first one. This is how a sequel does it really, really well, when it's a radioactive spider from a different dimension. I rather like that, but I have a few questions about how it got there, because I guess it had come from the colliders. Is that why?
Oh,
From the first time?
you must have missed that part. Yeah, it just
Yes.
so Spot was the person who brought it from the other dimension,
Oh, okay.
and then it escaped, and so that's why he's like, I created you into a superhero, and look
Got
what you
it.
made me into, a monster.
That's, yeah, and I liked Spot for most of it. I thought it was funny, like the whole mechanics of his
Holes.
whole portals or whatever. Yeah, I like the line where he's just like, I had this gaping hole in me and I had to fill it up, and I decided to fill it with more holes. I really, that's a really funny play on
Stop
words
talking
and
about
a
your
great
holes, please. You're
villain.
making us uncomfortable.
Yeah, stop talking about your holes. I thought that was a really good line though. Like I found something to fill my holes with, or fill myself up with more holes. That's just like a really funny, like a villain getting more evil, like he's more empty inside. Very funny writing there. So I'm like, this must have been written before the writer's strike, because that was spot on. Like that's very good writing.
No pun intended.
Yeah, and I love it. Like he's kind of like I think he's played by Jason Schwartzman, who's kind of always plays like a dweeb. He reminds me Gideon from what's it called? Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. He's all in Wes Anderson movies and stuff.
Yep. He's
So
great.
it's funny that, and then Oscar Isaac played Miguel. So I definitely want to
Mhm.
go see this movie again. I think Miguel did an amazing performance with like I love how the Spider-Man does a really good job at showing so easily and so clearly the character's motivations. Like Kingpin in the first movie, he lost his wife and son.
Yes.
And this movie, he literally loses his daughter trying to go into some other multiverse, like which is like a little bit of a Rick and Morty thing, where he's like, I went into a
Yeah.
universe where I died and I was going to go inhabit that life, and then they show like it all just gets wiped out or whatever. I was like, well, it's very dark and very
it's like the Citadel of
nihilist.
Ricks, this one.
Yeah, yeah. It kind of that's exactly what I was thinking when I watched it, but I was like,
Mhm.
I do want to see more, because there was a lot more to it. But it did have a little bit of that plot line. But in the end, like if it's done well, I could watch that story a million times. I thought it was super
Mhm.
funny. And
Mhm.
like I love that they took chances with the animation. Like Phil Lord, obviously they did the Lego movie. I love that there was actually a Lego Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like a little part, they had Jonah
You're one of
Jameson.
our best.
They clearly had what's his face do the voice for it too. That was clearly what's his name? The scary guy, Omni-Man, what's his name? J.K. Simmons. J.K. Simmons do the
Oh,
voice of Jonah
yeah.
Jameson in the Lego version. You
Mhm.
hear him. He's like, Parker.
Mhm.
He like, it's so
Yeah,
clearly
that's right,
J.K.
yeah.
Simmons. And even
Yeah.
if they just ripped it from the Sam Raimi, it doesn't matter. Like, and then there was the all power responsibility kind of line throughout. But like, one of the is like the power of, what did he say? The holes, or the power of the teleportation in my hand, on the palm of my hand. He says the line from like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
He says
There's
the
just
power
so
of the
many,
multiverse
The
in
power
the
of
palm of my
the
hand.
yeah.
the power of the multiverse in the palm of my hand. That's what it was. Yeah. Which I thought was interesting. So like, yeah, two villains. Miguel clearly is a villain, and
Well, see,
the
but
Hulk,
is
so.
is he even a villain? See,
Ty, remember? We're the heroes. That's what he says, Ty.
Yeah, and then he goes, I know he goes, and then they're humanely put back into their universes. You see the Rhino, he's like, he's like screaming, and it gets like
I was curious
blasted. I'm
I
curious
thought
if
in the
they're killing him.
beginning.
Okay. Oh, last theory, real quick. So, last thing I wanted to ask you guys: do you think it's possible that Miguel is hiding something? Because I actually thought two things. One, I thought, is it possible that Miguel is lying and he has to convince Miles and everyone else to go along with this so he can maybe get what he wanted, like get his daughter back somehow, right? Or is it possible that he is an imposter and he's not necessarily a Spider-Man, like you said, with the injections? I was like, and then clearly the scene where he's gonna bite the vulture, you're like, he's just got a lot of stuff
Well,
going on that we
it's no,
don't know about,
well,
and I'm
Ty,
very curious to see him explore
and
it in
he's
the
not
third
like a
movie.
vampire. He's
Yeah.
actually he's 50% spider.
Spider, got it. So
So
like a spider ready to bite.
That's why
But
he's
either way, terrifying as all get out. Like he has
because he's
fangs,
genetically
like,
modified to
so
be
creepy.
part spider. That's why his powers aren't like
Okay, well he lets the emotions get the best of him because he's ready to bite Vulture. Poor guy. He's just
Yeah.
like a. I love that too. And he's like, what did he say? Like Leonardo da Vinci paint or whatever. He's like a two-dimensional bird and he's flying. So cool. Villains in different animation styles fighting. Like that's just so. It's very novel.
see,
It feels so fresh.
but
It
that's-
also felt like last thing I'm going to say. Sorry, and then I'll stop talking. It just made me think about Everything Everywhere All at Once. It too. Like a lot of that multiverse dimension stuff does feel like a modern meta movie. So anyway, postmodern meta.
See, what I did love is I feel like that's why I would even argue, especially on this rewatch, I don't even know if Miguel is like necessarily an antagonist. He just has a different, I think, view, because I think there's two beliefs. You can either believe that you try to sacrifice everything to protect each an individual person because each an individual person matters, and so you're not willing to sacrifice small lives, even if because if you give up sacrificing like small casualties, then it almost defeats the whole purpose of the greater win. Or Miguel's point of view, where you have to be willing to sacrifice a person here or there for the greater good of like everyone, because that in and of itself is more caring towards all and more like less discriminatory to where like you're caring for everyone.
I would still say he's more antagonistic than the whole man, just because the whole man is kind of like the obvious like foil, but he's still more like
See, but you could even
mora-
argue
morally opposed, right?
you
Like
could even
he's the
but
exact
you could
opposite. Yeah,
you could argue that Miles is technically the antagonist because he's the
true.
only one
He's
in the entire
redefining what it
film.
is to be a hero. 100%.
Because he's the only one
Yes.
in the film who doesn't follow what you're supposed to
Yes.
do, because you're supposed to
He's
allow
a troublemaker,
things-
and I love him
'cause-
for it, man.
Well, and
Go
that's what I
Miles.
think is so amazing too. Is I love the line that you are the original anomaly. Because if you think about it, Spider-Man did die because he
In his
saved
universe.
Miles. Because he's like Miles is like, ah, like, and so if he never would have been down there, Spider-Man would have, like he said, like Miguel said, he would have defeated Green Goblin and stopped the Collider. And so I think also another reason why Miguel hates Miles is because of how much Miles reminds him of himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's
Oh, interesting.
because he's like, you like, he says essentially like, I already tried to do what you're doing and it ruined my universe. And see, I think Miguel's too close-minded to where I don't think I think he believes that. For me, the reason I think Ty, similar to what you're saying, I don't think he's completely sabotaging. I think it's an insecurity that he thinks if someone else was able to alter their canon
That
event
means
in
it
their
was his
world,
fault that he didn't.
not collapse it, then he would also feel it's unfair that he's like,
Yeah,
it worked
Why?
for
Why
me.
do you get? Yeah, it didn't work
Why
for
do
me.
you
Why?
get to keep your loved
If
one?
I don't get to be happy, you don't get to be happy. Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's just essentially like, this is what we do. We just live unhappy lives. And it's just like, well, what if I'm willing to risk it all? And then you could argue that's not your, like, you're no place to like maybe ruin an entire universe or an entire world because of that.
For sure. Well, guys, I love talking this movie. I have more questions, but I'll get to it later. But you guys take it easy, stay safe, and stay out of trouble.
Okay.
See
So,
you later.
but Jordan, what was your two favorite things?
Well, you guys were kind of getting at it. It was I love how, because there's this great buildup from the first movie, and then the second one was almost like a hard undercut of like, you're not a real superhero. I love that because it just seemed like Ty mentioned it too, is like he is making his own story, and I love that because it's like you are in control. It's like like, and I love how they like are saying like you're a mistake. It just reminds me a lot of Blade Runner 2049, where it's like, you're a robot, so stop kidding yourself. Like, you think you're special, but you're not. Like, I love that kind of stuff because it's like reality hits you, and you have to decide what to do with that. I mean, you can let it drag you down, but I just think he uses that to fuel him. And then you have that beautiful moment where they're going up that thing that me and Cameron mentioned. It looks like the thing from Mitchell's versus the Machines, which same studio. And so it's just cool that like they're going up and there's like a trillion Spider-Mans, which gets into my second favorite thing is like, along with you guys, I loved seeing so many different Spider-Mans. Like, I mean, I don't think I could ever get sick of that. Just like a new one. Like in the first one, we got to see a couple and that was so much fun. But this one, there's like endless ones, and they just make like second cameo, like tiny little singing cameos, like the cowboy one from the T-Rex. Like, you just can't help
the
but
cat.
laugh.
And what's cool is
Yeah.
the Spider-Man that's like, there's nowhere to run, and he's like, sorry everyone, there was somewhere to run. That's actually the producer of the soundtrack.
Oh
no way.
yes, that's
Yeah,
great.
That's
Metro
awesome.
Boomin. Yeah, so
That
he
is
he
funny.
got to be featured in the film, which is awesome.
That's great.
There's
Yeah.
nowhere to run. Sorry everyone, there was somewhere to run.
Yeah, there's just so many. Like, you guys were even explaining a bunch to me because clearly, and which makes me appreciate it even more, is how many Easter eggs they put in here. And I imagined there was, but I was like, I'm not really following any of these. Like, the lady, he's like, you don't seem phased by seeing me right here. And you guys said that's because she's from Venom.
Venom's universe, yeah.
Yeah. So that was cool that they spent so much time to just do these little things for like super geeks. Like,
Yeah,
you
well,
guys.
and also like, what's it called? When, for example, Childish Gambino or Donald Glover, when he, like, his cameo as the Prowler, that was like hinted at in Spider-Man Homecoming, because Tom Holland interacts with him and he says, hey, he's like, why are you helping me out? He's like, you're like kind of like a criminal or whatever. He goes, I have a nephew who lives in these neighborhoods. And he's like, I want to keep these neighborhoods safe. and he's
Mm.
referencing Miles.
Oh,
And so,
interesting.
and that's why there's also rumors about a potential live action Spider-Man into Spider-Verse, which I don't know how I feel about it.
Yeah.
But
Because
They
I
wouldn't
just-
be able to do it as well, but yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
one of the best parts I feel like about this is the animation style.
Yeah, so that's why it would be really hard, but I mean, it would be really fun to see just because I mean, I love anything Spider-Man, but but yeah,
Yeah.
Grant, what about you before I kind of gush more? Have you already said your two things? No, right?
No. So I think the first thing that comes to my mind, I love Spider-Man 2099 Miguel's entrance into the movie.
Dude,
It's just
second,
like such an epic moment.
second time it was just as good. I was like,
Really?
oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I'm like, it's like I'm watching for the first time.
Yeah.
Like his music, like the
oh, it's like it's like that horror kind of like thriller feel, and just like the entrance was just amazing. And then I love too, like I love how they kind of poke fun at the same time about how serious he is. Like Gwen is just like kind of like not really taking it back like we are. She's kind of just like, oh, huh. Like, and then they just like make fun of him and stuff. And or like he's like
sound.
like, oh, so like a Spider-Verse. I didn't hear anything.
Yeah, we didn't hear
but-
anything. But
What?
but like how Miles calls it the Spider-Verse, and he's like, no, it's an arachnic like web interconnected web or whatever. He's like, okay, that sounds dumb too. So I just like how like they portray his character, but then also like still like kind of use humor to lighten the mood around him, And so I just think it really creates this like good like conflict around him and makes him like more of a villain, but you're also like, okay, is he really a villain, So I love how complex they make his character, I guess.
Well, and that, Grant, that's what made me even love it. What's called, because the first time watching it, I don't know if I loved that Miles was the Prowler. I was kind of like, oh, that's pretty cool, but I was like, I don't know. But on the rewatch, I loved it so much because you see, because I think in a world where Miguel's father died. I mean, not Miguel. Miles's father dies. He feels powerless, so he's like, okay, forget this. Like, I'm gonna get to a point where I'll never feel powerless again. And so that's what makes him turn.
well, and his uncle's still there, and I think his uncle is a bad influence on him. Do we recommend it?
Left off. Whoa, what? That's where it's ending it?
Still, I haven't even said my two
There's
favorite
so much
things.
to
Nugget. Holy fudge.
I'm just excited to say I recommend it 100%. Okay, all right, back to
Yes,
Cameron.
yes.
Your two favorite things.
No. I only did one. So my second is the second is I love the morals in this movie. Like they make you question not your own morals. Like I love like they make you question the morality of the decisions that the characters are making. Like I love this conflict idea of that Miguel keeps pushing of like, we need to let Miles' father die to create this canon event that's supposedly supposed to happen. And then I love the complexity of that like Miles is trying to go like stop this canon event from happening. Is Miguel going to push this as far as we need to kill his father to make this event happen?
Or
so-
is Miles going to cause the canon event to happen by trying to stop it?
Yeah. Just like the wise words of Master Oogway. He's like, what you send to try and prevent it will cause, Tai Lung to escape, which is pretty crazy. So yeah, so it could end up being something like that too. But I just love the complexity of that conflict that just like it's like, because I feel like too, you have to get all these people that are like kind of on Miguel's side. Like you have to convince all of them that this is the best thing, And so it'll be interesting to see like how like the characters
sides with who.
question, right? Yeah, and how like which characters will switch over to Miles' side.
Yeah.
So I love the conflict of this movie. It's really, really good.
Yeah. No, and well, I just want to say, Drew can testify to this. I did call that Miles got to the wrong universe, as because I'm a nerd. Like,
Really?
as soon as it said
Dang.
Earth 42, I was like, that's not his Earth, and I'm like, that's the Earth of his spider that bit him.
Nerd.
No
And so the
way.
entire time I was just like, it almost was like anticlimactic for me because I was just like, okay, when are we gonna figure out that it's not his Earth? And so because I told Anna, Andrew next to me, I'm like, this isn't his Earth. I'm like, he got into the spider that bit him's Earth. And that's why I love too. What's super dope is like on the second viewing, I also noticed this. There's like a bunch of details. Like, for example, when he gets to Earth 42, when he like quickly throws on the clothes because his mom's there, his clothes are purple and green instead of red and blue. And just like as a little like Easter egg or caveat, like he's the Prowler. Like this isn't the same Miles that you're used to. Which I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even notice that. I just saw him like throwing his clothes, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's just Miles' clothes, but it's purple and green instead of his red and blue clothes because of like the shift. And then I love like the alluding to, it's like, you take out your braids, and
Yeah, she's like, what did you do? Your hair's different. I
yeah,
was like, it doesn't look any different.
yeah, and that's why at first also I didn't love it because I felt like it undercut that important moment he had with his mom just by it being in a different universe. And I was like, dang, it's kind of frustrating, but I felt like I almost feel like it was more important for Miles than it would have been for his mom, because I think it was important for him to be brave enough to express that to someone, whether it was his mom or a different mom. Like, I think it was important for him to be brave enough to be like, okay, I'm gonna actually open up and be vulnerable with somebody, like regardless of the consequences. And I think that's also the cool thing that the message showed is like, I felt like the overarching theme as well, along with like the two cakes, I think also show like honesty and vulnerability might be more difficult in the moment, but long term is more beneficial. Because I mean, you look at Gwen, like if her being vulnerable and mentioning and showing her father who she is, like sucked in the moment, and he tried to like arrest her and accuse her of all this, but it's like in the long term now, like he's only there to support and love her, and he's the one that's saying like, hey, this guy dropped this off for you, go get him. Like, and that's what I love is like that. And see, that's why I feel like Miles will do that with his family, and it will long term be beneficial. And even I think also if he's honest with them saying, dad's going to die, but I'm going to do everything I can to not let it happen, to essentially let them know, because I think transparency is always the best option. So but yeah, so my first favorite thing is I mean, all the things I mentioned, there's so many good things. I love the soundtrack, and I've just been listening to so many different songs from the soundtrack for the past like week and a half. It's so good, which I didn't think, because the first one had an amazing soundtrack, and like Ty mentioned, the What's Up Danger was just like the perfect song. This song also had multiple songs that I felt like perfectly fit the scene, like Hummingbird when he's like floating and Gwen's like opening the portal. I'm just like, this is what it feels like sometimes to listen to music, and especially to like a song like this.
Oh yeah.
And like when they were like whipping through Brooklyn together, and the song called Mona Lisa by Dominique Fike, like there's just like so many good, I don't know, that's why I think it's funny. Jordan's wife Tatiana said, oh, this is just totally Cameron's movie, like when she watched the first one, when she watched the first one, because it is just like everything I love about film and like media just mushed into one, where it's just like superhero, like music, like art, like the visuals, like there's so many amazing aspects of this. And I think my second favorite thing, movies like this also blow me away. That this movie is the reason I don't love Nope, is because for me, you could stop every frame of this movie, and it's a screenshot. Like Grant would just love every single like frame of this movie, and there's like little details, like for example, all of the characters in the entire movie move at 1 frame per second, except Miles. Miles moves at 2 frames per second, and showing that he's different than everyone else. And Cyberpunk, or not Cyberpunk,
It's probably
Spider-
even less, right?
Spider-Punk, he's 3 frames per second,
Yeah.
which is so awesome because he hates being like the norm, and so he doesn't even move at the same frame rate as everyone else. So it's little
That's
things like that
interesting.
and little attention to detail that is just like, oh my gosh, like it. And that's the thing too. It's not just like, oh, that's kind of inconsistent. Why is he moving slower? It's like there's a reason. Like Miles and Spider-Punk are the only two people not moving at 1 frame per second. So it's like that's why they also have a different feel. It's because they're different than everyone else. And that's why like there's just so many things like that just like all of the artistic choices feed into like the themes. Like for example, even the color schemes with Miles and with like Ty mentioned the talks with Gwen and her dad. Like you can tell moments of like when Gwen feels like she's in the dark and like it's much cooler colors and she's got like blues and purples and it's just like I feel like I can't connect to you. And then the dad just seems like much more like warm colors where he's like hot-headed and like I can't deal with this. But then like when they come together, it's more of like a soft pink and it's just like a more like caring and loving and understanding. I don't know. Like that's why I think this movie is so amazing is because it artistically is a masterpiece, but then as an entertainment is also amazing. Whereas something like Nope might artistically be a masterpiece, but entertainment wise might not be on the same level, if that kind of makes sense. So that's why I just think is so amazing about a movie like this to be able to balance that because it is so hard because that's a me and Jordan and Drew have talked about. Wes Anderson we feel is sometimes style over content where he would rather have everything look so perfect and nice that it like he doesn't care if it doesn't really make sense because then it's like, oh well, at least it's OCD nice and it's perfect and it's like, okay, but if it's not like if it doesn't make sense in the movie or in the shot, like why is it in there? And that's why I feel like this movie just puts so much attention to detail. But I mean, I could gush for.
I
like,
wonder if the Lego Spider-Man is 2 frames because it has the kind of a more jittery look.
Oh yeah, true. And maybe it should. Or I mean, obviously, it's probably similar to stop motion too. They might have just done.
Yeah, because they did the Lego movie, or the studio did
Yeah.
at least. So, well, Phil Lord did. He was.
But I mean, he made the Lego movie pretty seamless. But yeah, I mean, obviously, it was intentional.
Yeah,
and
because
to
they
look
wanted
more
it to look
choppy.
like the old
A
Lego,
yeah,
stop motion videos that
Yeah.
people would make that we would make and stuff.
yeah. But
So.
I definitely do recommend rewatching it
Oh yes, I'm young.
because holy crap! Because and
I just the only tiniest nitpick ever is just the ending. I know we've already mentioned it. Cameron's mentioned it. I just wish we had known it was a part 1 because the same thing with Dune. You're like, oh wait, what? It's wait, I have to wait another how many years before I can watch the second part? So that was the only bummer part because I just wasn't ready for that and it was building up like the end of a TV show. So I was just bummed because I was so excited just to keep watching more. So. Because this is it. I mean, Grant is right. The pacing is perfect. It's a perfect story, but you're ready for the rest of it. You're like, where's the
No,
rest?
I agree.
so that's why it is so much better on the second viewing because that's why I was just like left so unsatisfied because I was like, I need 5. Like Drew was like, it should have just been a 4-hour movie. And I was like, and that's what I love is like it's one of those movies. I think all great movies leave you wanting more, but at the same time, so satisfied with where it ended. And so that's why I think on the second viewing, I was much more like, oh wow, this the pacing and the overall arc is actually perfect for setup.
Yeah. Well, and I also said this after the theater when we were talking about this, like yeah, these are on a cliffhanger, but I also love how it feels like they completed the arc of Gwen, like her relationship with her father.
Yeah.
But that's now resolved, and now either some kind of new arc for a different character or just like the conflict that was unresolved is resolved in the next movie.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think it'll be interesting. I think the big relationship conflict will be Miguel and Miles. I think also potentially with Miles and himself from Earth 42, because I think it's awesome too that like because he didn't get bitten, he became Prowler. So I think the fact that he was supposed to become Spider-Man means that there is good in that Earth 42 Miles, and so like that's why I think. That's why I also like them ending on that moment because I think if they're going to subvert our expectations and him join him and be like, I'll help you out against Spot, I think it would have been weird to do that, like him join the team right at the end because I'd have been like, this is like so cheesy and weird, you know? But and then the other thing that I loved, man, I haven't laughed out loud that many times in a movie, especially in the theaters, maybe ever. Like Guardians of the Galaxy, I was laughing so much, but like I laughed more in this than I did in the New Guardians, and I freaking love the New Guardians.
New Guardians is so good.
And so like I was just like so impressed at how many little jokes that. Then like I just loved like and most of them. The best part about it is like most of them weren't even like cheap humor. It was all
Yeah.
like
Well,
there was so much physical humor.
We were talking about it was so fast. You were like laughing. You're like, oh no, I'm missing the next one.
Yeah, like I can't laugh too much because I'm gonna miss.
Yeah.
Because like I love his conversation with his dad as Spider-Man. He's like, as an objective observer with no
skin in the game.
He's like, maybe we should get off. He's like, excuse me, what did you say? He's like, I don't know, maybe you should just let him like spread his wings like this. And then I love how later, like, and I just love the interaction of the mom with Gwanda. I bet she doesn't even speak Spanish. I just like I love the protective mother and how like and I love that speech that she has with Miles too. She's like, it's hard seeing my little boy growing up into a little man. And she's like, and I always just worry that you're not going to feel loved by like everyone. But
I think too that her speech kind of inspired him when he is completely rejected by literally everyone, when he goes to that like headquarters of Spider-Man, that like I think he really took a lot of like strength from her convincing him that you are loved by at least us, you know.
Yeah,
and you should love yourself too. Yeah.
And that's what I think also motivates him. He's like, I'm willing to sacrifice everything to protect these people because they're the only people that truly care about me.
Right. Yeah.
So 100% do recommend. You have to watch this in theaters. Yeah, there's too many good things about this movie to talk about, but it's 100% recommend you.
Yes.
And if you haven't seen the first one, you got to see the first one.
Yes.
But honestly, you could maybe even get away without seeing the first one. It would be a little confusing. But
yeah. And too, just real quick, like these people who wrote this story really did their research. There are so many like nods and Easter eggs to comics. Like apparently like a lot of the art styles too, like reference to a lot of the comics, the way they were written.
Like Scarlet Spider.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's crazy how well their research was into like including all of these like different Spider-Man into the movie. It's like so well done. So
yep,
definitely
great writing.
Loved it.
Recommend.
Peace.